What's happening, sports fans? Welcome back to another episode with Mom and Papa Joe. Today is something a little different. I'm going to be showing you a brisket trim, but this is a brisket trim that is ideally, I'm doing it for beginners. I'm going to bare the very soul of this brisket. I'm going to remove all the fat, front and back, show you the anatomy. So this is sort of an anatomy slash trim tutorial. All this fat is going to be gone. I want to show you how the muscles run. Remember, there's no right or no wrong way. This is a very lean brisket, a cheap brisket. This brisket is a full pack or a small one. It weighs a little over 8 pounds, 23 bucks, $23.95 for $24. Pretty lean. I've got some very fatty point vacuum seal in my freezer. So before I get ready to use those points, I want to be able to mix in some leaner meat. So that is where this meat is going to come into play. So the first thing I want to do for you guys is just get rid of this silver skin. Seasonings and rubs don't stick to it very well. So of course we're going to get rid of it. Whatever knife you decide to use, just make sure it's sharp. If you don't have the fancy knife, welcome to the club. It's not a must. I'm pushing up under the areas where I'm slicing. I prefer to slice with the grain. It gives me cleaner lines. I'm gonna come back here, work on this fat pad. There's pure fat that gets in the way. Nothing to it but fat. Now I can finish my silver skin. So we're gonna call that good on the silver skin. Anything you've got hanging on like this, you want to get rid of that. It's pretty lean and it's only going to get in your way, crisp up, dry, and shred when you attempt to slice. Alright, so there we are, silver skin removal complete. Let's turn around to the back. So, as this is for beginners, just a quick anatomy. As we can see on the exterior, this top muscle is called a flat. The grain of the flat is running in this direction. In between the fat is a fat vein that runs all the way, pretty much almost all the way across, from end to or side to side. Flat fat vein, and underneath there's a second muscle called a point. The point is fattier. The flat is pretty lean. The point is fattier. You're going to be able to see some marbling in it. Marbling, that white specks, those white specks within the muscle. For trimming purposes, a lot of people would just go ahead and cook this brisket as is. There's still plenty of hard fat on this brisket. Hard fat that's not going to render. All right, fat that may take up your rub, but before you eat, before you slice, you're gonna get rid of it. So now you're wasting rub. So yes, you wanna get rid of all that. I will show you first how I would trim this brisket for your backyard. Again, all this fat right here. We're gonna get rid of this because we want to line up with our flat. And again, this is a cheap brisket. It's a select, not a whole lot of fat like you would see normally in the point. We're gonna continue rounding. On a brisket, you don't wanna see any angles because those angles really are in conflict with the smooth flow of air, smoke, and heat. All right, that looks nicely rounded. You're gonna have a thick side and a thinner side. On the thick side, usually you're gonna see a thick line of fat. More often than not, you're gonna have an area of gray or brownish colored meat and fat. And it's caused by the hot water wash or the chemical wash during the processing point of this piece of meat. As they're removing it from that massive side of beef, they're washing with hot water with steam or sometimes a chemical. It's not easy to, it's not pleasant to look at, so you want to get rid of that. Again, you're not losing anything there. One of the biggest things about trimming the brisket for home use is to maximize your yield. We're going to continue to thin out this fat, this hard fat. It serves no purpose for you during the cook. Before we flip over, so here is your flat. Your point usually runs about 2/3 of the way down and ends up about right here. And then the rest of it is point. What I like to do for backyard, all right, I want to minimize this fat layer. This meat here, this point, while it does have some fat, it can be very lean. So I'm going to remove some of it until I get to the more fatty in here. First thing I want to do is thin this big thick layer of fat. I always encourage people, make sure your knives are sharp. Make multiple passes. Make multiple passes as opposed to trying to remove it all at once. You can always cut off more, but you can't put it back. All right, so we've got this nicely trimmed. We want to come back here and get rid of some of this lean so we could get into this fat vein. What you will see a lot of people do sometimes is they're going to come in here and knock some of it out in this fashion. All right, some people will just take it out like that, then press back down. That is one method to minimize that. Again, I think that this meat here is pretty lean and does not cook up very well. That is my opinion. So the way I like to handle that, instead of doing this, I want to come back and I'm actually going to remove that little piece there completely. And now I'm going to knock this down just about to the fat. I'm going to keep working just about to the fat until I am at this point. All right, so I've still got protection for my flat, and now I've got some point exposed, caramelized as well. It accepts those and hangs on to the seasonings very well. Now, as we start looking at our flat end, you'll notice that it tapers from thick to narrow. All your briskets will. You want a brisket, man, that's got close to it, at a minimum, close to 3/4 of an inch of meat if you plan on cooking it. What you will see a lot of people do as they trim, they will come up here to where it's thicker and they will just mark a line, something like this. That is fine if you're into that. But I think you end up losing a lot of meat when you cook it, when you trim it like that, because all this is gone right here. And that's a lot of good thick meat. I am a fan of doing it this way. All right, you figure out where your thin is, and you'll come down and knock off that area. All right, knock off that thin area. And because we don't want any angles, we're gonna round that off. You'll come back on the thicker side and you're gonna do the same thing. All right, all you're doing now is rounding off without losing all that we would have lost. We can see that we still have a thick, healthy fat cap. We're gonna begin working to thin that out. And remember, like I said, take multiple passes. The thing about trimming a brisket well is it will minimize post-cook trimming. All right, so once you've gotten to this point where you've got your brisket pretty much shaped, all right, you've got your flat 1/4 inch of fat protection. Your fat vein has been whittled down. You still got plenty of point meat. This brisket would be ready for seasoning. The last thing we want to do with these edges is just to round them off a little bit. Again, you don't want any 45 or 90-degree type angles, because they stop the flow of smoke and air. It continues to beat against them instead of flowing over them nice and smooth. And those edges will crisp up and burn. They will crisp up, they'll dry up, they'll shred when it's time to slice. So once again, nice shape. Again, here's our grain. As a beginner, you need to remember the direction your grain is running. You want to slice this brisket against the grain in an effort to minimize the chew, shorten the fibers, which will make for an easier chew. So maybe you want to come here and mark something along these lines as what would be the direction of the grain. That is if you want to slice 100% against the grain. I get my briskets tender enough that I don't have to slice 100% against the grain. I can go maybe 85%. I could then make my slice would have been someplace like this, and I'll be slicing this brisket about 85% against the grain as opposed to 100% against the grain. Again, just a personal preference, something to keep in mind. Again, you would have to round this off. What I want to do now is to take this even further to really show you the brisket anatomy. I'm going to get rid of all this fat. Remember, eventually this brisket is going to be ground up and added to some awesome Wagyu points that I have. So I'm just going to begin trying to remove all this fat so I can show you where the point ends, show you how the grains run. I got this idea to do this video when I saw a brisket picture online of someone who had severely over-trimmed their brisket. And I thought, man, that would make a pretty good demo as to the anatomy of a brisket. And that was about 6 months ago, and I finally pulled the trigger. And so here we are, folks. I've never seen a brisket that looks like this before. So it's kind of weird. But here's a great example of when we talk about the two different muscles. 1, 2, fat vein. 1, 2, fat vein. And you notice that the two different muscles have grains running in different directions. On the flat, F-L-A-T, here we are. All right, and on the point, here we are coming across. All right, so we've almost got this. We've almost got this. This is what we have. Oh, not quite 90 degrees, but you see. So as we flip over, what you normally see today is individuals slicing a finished brisket, all right, all the way across, and when they get to about a little over halfway, boom, they will stop, turn this, and now start slicing the point. Restaurants want to focus on the point when we get up here. So now on the point, they want to go against the grain. So let's say this is a finished brisket. As I start slicing, the way I'm going to slice, remember I'm going to grind this brisket, so it does not make a difference. All right, I'm slicing this brisket, and I'm going to make some thicker slices. Better for my grinder. I love the idea of slicing this entire brisket like this. I like to see slices that have got both flat and the point muscle. So I'm not worried about focusing on one or the other. I want you to have the best of both worlds. For restaurant purposes, all right, once they get to the meaty part of the flat, the thicker part of the once they get to the thicker part of the point, all right, they will now turn it 90 degrees, split it down the middle, and then, so now they're going to be cutting against the grain. All right, here's our grain. They're going to be slicing it in this manner. That's in restaurants. You will see that plenty on YouTube. In my opinion, there's no right, there's no wrong way. It's just a personal preference. Right? Just a personal preference. So here are the two different slices, sliced in different directions. Either one works. It's just a personal preference. So folks, that's pretty much it. A little bit of anatomy and a little bit of a trim tutorial. I hope you got something from this. If you did, please let me know. If you didn't, let me know that as well. If you're not subscribed to our channel, man, please think about doing so. We really appreciate your support. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to hang out with Mommy and Papa Joe. I want you to take care of yourselves, and we'll see you when we see you. Holla.